Howdy. Obviously, it's been a minute since I made a YouTube video because I have been busy. And you're like, what have you been busy with? I've been busy growing, changing, moving, all of that. I have been thinking about one thing constantly. I've been constantly thinking about like this thing past like 3 weeks. It's been on my mind. And you're like, what have you been thinking about? And truth be told, Halo 3 ODST. Now you're probably thinking to yourself like, Halo 3 ODST. First off, people don't even think about that game. That game was an expansion pack. It was an add-on, right? Let me paint the scene. So you have Halo 3, right? The end of like the Halo trilogy. Then they come out with Halo 3 ODST, which was like a full-length like expansion pack onto like the Halo 3 game. It was a side story. And ODST stands for Orbital Dropship Troopers. And you're like, okay, but what is it? I think ODST is really, really interesting from like a top-down perspective when it comes to the franchise, because Halo has always like been about like the power fantasy, empowering the player. You are the Master Chief, who is literally a 7-foot-tall Marine super soldier. And then here comes ODST, and the promotional materials and the tone and the atmosphere of the game were completely different from the jump. Halo ODST is a lot more somber, it's a lot more melancholic. It is about the interpersonal experience of war. But I'd argue that compared to something like Halo Reach, which is very much the same thing, they're tonally a bit different. So like timeline-wise, on the Halo timeline, Halo ODST takes place after the events of Halo 2 and right before the events of Halo 3. I think that's really important because I think Halo ODST serves as a bridge. And I think there's a lot of media out there that serves as like bridges, and kind of not so much focused on the story or the conflict, but focused on the journey there. And I think that's what ODST is really about. While I want to talk about like the story and all of that, I want to focus on the tone and the mood and the atmosphere of Halo 3 ODST. Because ODST, from the start, like when you boot that game up, there's a lot of color correction. And you're like, color correction? Yeah. So games kind of have like a built-in color palette to them that you can either enhance or dehance and like post via processing, filters, all of that. A great example of this would be like GTA 4 versus GTA Lost and Damned and GTA Gay Tony, right? Like them shits look completely different color palette wise. Now ODST takes a lot of influence from the film noir genre, right? So think Blade Runner, think not Casablanca. I don't know why the fuck I almost said Casablanca. That is not a film noir. Sunset Boulevard, but that's a black and white noir. But that's a good important point to bring up. The blacks in Halo 3 ODST are a lot harsher. They're a lot more toned down or toned up. It's dark. That's what I'm really trying to fucking say. Halo 3 ODST is fucking dark. So they implemented this thing called Visor Mode. And what Visor Mode was, is it made everything brighter, but it gives the game a neon kind of palette, right? In Halo 3 ODST, it's very somber and very melancholy because of the constant rain. So you have this constantly raining atmosphere with visor vision, which is bright, neon, it's fluorescent, and you're just in this world, and it feels like Blade Runner. But what's really interesting from a gameplay perspective is that compared to the traditional Halo gameplay, where you're super powerful super soldier, you are a lot weaker in ODST. ODST will kick your ass. ODST was like the Dark Souls of Halo. If you played that on Legendary, that game was unforgiving. And I think that's a good thing, because in a lot of our media and a lot of our games, you know, they tend to be really focused on that power fantasy.
I wrote a blog post a while ago about why I f***ing hate video games, because this is what it does. It appeals to like the male fantasy.
And I think, me personally, out of all the like first person shooters I've played over the years, the only game that isn't true horror, like something like Fear, that is about like that depowering, would be something like ODST. And what like I appreciate about like ODST is that it's as much about the war as it is the interpersonal relationships between the characters. So you have like Buck and Veronica and their story, Mickey, Dutch, all these other characters were in the game, in the franchise. And while I think Reach does a great job of all of this afterwards, I think ODST, it did it first. And I think what I appreciate is that it's not as bleak. And what I mean is that ODST at its core is about isolating. Thrown into New Mombasa and it's dark, you don't know where you are. And New Mombasa kind of serves as like a hub world for the player. And then you kind of get all these missions through flashbacks, all of that. And it's so much different than the other Halo games in the Halo franchise, but it still has that Halo gameplay at its core, right? You still have, you know, something like Kikawani Station, where you're like driving the Banshees and there's all these like neon, the overwhelming feeling of the drone's nest. You have that one mission on the bridge where you have to hold out instead of push forward. And it's a Halo experience that's rooted in challenging you. It's rooted in kind of taking away that power. And like, combined with that Marty O'Donnell soundtrack, I really cannot stop thinking about that game. And I think I can tell you why. Because I'm in a transition period in my life. You know, I'm at like a lot of growth and change and all of that. Halo ODST serves as a bridge between Halo 2 and Halo 3. It's not the end of the story like Reach, right? And I think in life, you know, our life is very, very much bookmarked by the media that like we consume at like at that point in time. So like when I was 8, 9, all of that, I used to watch hella SpongeBob, right? I was watching SpongeBob all the time, right? And when I think of SpongeBob, I think of that point in time in my life. Or like when I was really into Godard in high school, right? I was really fucking with that Godard, them French films. And that bookmarked a chapter in my life. I just cannot stop thinking about ODST. And maybe it's just because like I moved out for the first time. You know, I'm a little scared. I'm a little overwhelmed. But you know what? Like, it's fine. I will get through it. And that's life. And I don't know, man. Like, I think there's something really beautiful about that. Just Halo 3 ODST, it hits different. That's all I gotta say. I know this one's a little bit shorter than the videos I usually make. I have a lot of stuff planned. Don't worry. But thank you for taking time out of your day to spend some time with me. I'm greatly appreciative. Go play Halo ODST if you haven't. It's a heat game. I'm gonna go play some Shin Megami Tensei 3. Cause 5 just, yeah, I'm excited. Alright, bye. What a fucking peace sign, bro. Let me go off camera.